Hello, gorgeous humans. Oh, good morning. Happy Monday. How are you feeling? Welcome to the morning show. I'm your host, Marli Ensel, at Marli Ensel on the Instagrams, and this is the morning show. How are you feeling? We're here, and today we're going to chat about the receiving mode, manifesting in the receiving mode. So, but before we do, how are you feeling? How's the vibe? How's the energy? I'll tell you what, here on my end, there's a lot of big energy. I feel, I'm telling you, I think that there are some massive shifts happening right now collectively. And if you're in tune and you're feeling it, just know you're not crazy. There really is some big energy that's happening right now. And we're here for it. It's a really beautiful thing, albeit sometimes a little intense. Amen. So say hello as you're jumping on. How's your Monday? Good morning. So over the weekend, we had Father's Day, of course. And what else did we do? It sort of seems like a blur. Do you ever have that where like the couple of days goes by and you're like, what happened? All right, well, let's dive in. So, today we're talking about manifesting in receiving mode. And there's a couple of just really potent points that I want to share with you that will hopefully kind of debunk this whole receiving mode thing. Amen. Because I know we can hear these terms when it comes to manifesting, and we're like, okay, be in receiving mode. I receive, nothing's happening. Right. And then sometimes can kind of throw us off. It can make us get disheartened about the whole like manifestation magic kind of thing. So today we're going to talk about what receiving mode is. We're going to talk about the difference in receiving mode and actively trying to make something happen, and how to know what you're leading from in terms of, are you leading from the ego or are you leading from that higher self part of you? So we're going to get into it all. I'm so excited to dive in because this is one of those subjects that it makes your soul like take a deep breath and release. You're like, oh, thank God. Thank God. Okay, so let's set the premise. First and foremost, I'm going to give you a little contextual background on what we're doing here. And I want to say again, this is my understanding. This is my philosophy. I share it with you guys in the hopes that it's helpful for you in moving through your spiritual journey of being human. But if it doesn't land on you, let it go. Take what lands on you as truth, leave the rest. So, in our state of being, we have our higher self, which is the truth of who we are. All right. Now, I want to start there because a lot of times we see our higher self as some separate being. We see it as like some being that's like existing on a cloud, waiting on us to just catch up and be there, right? Your higher self is you, this personality, this version of you. You are your higher self. Here's what happens though. Your higher self is this, I mean, huge, like light filled energy with personality. The truth of who you are comes into what we call an ego, right? The ego is our human existence. It is essentially, you can think about it like a computer program. Think about it like the higher self is the electricity. That's who you are, okay? And you're plugging into an ego, which is the computer program that's running. Now, the program that's running has all of these little things that it does automatically, right? So now you've got the program that's running from what you were taught as a kid. You've got the program that's running from what you learned in a past life. We won't go too much into that. You've got the program that's running with all of your belief systems about who you are and what's possible for you. That's your identity. And so the higher self version of you is running through this program. And what happens is we merge with it, or at least it feels like we merge with it, and we stop identifying as the higher self and we start identifying as the ego or the program. So now we've got all of these emotional reactions. We've got all of these things that we believe to be true about life, about ourselves, all of this stuff. And that's running our life. And then we entirely forget the truth of who we are, the power of who we are. And we start thinking we're the computer program and that everything's on us and we have to figure it out ourselves. And if we don't make anything happen, then it's not going to happen. And then we start spiraling into burnout, into overwhelm, because we're putting all of this pressure on a system that was not made to manifest anything. Okay. So I'm going to give you a new perspective on this. And I can only imagine that it's going to do for you what it's done for me. Everything that you're operating in right now is two parts: higher self and ego. You need the ego, by the way. It's not a bad thing. It's just a really bad leader. Like a really bad leader. You don't want to be leading your life from the computer program, from the ego, because it's going to run a program. It's just going to get you the same looping experience over and over and over again when you try to lead from it. So you've got two parts operating here. The higher self part of you is the one that is fueling your lived experience. The higher self is where all of your ideas come from. The higher self is where you tap into creation. Creation is what I call God energy, because that's the closest we can get to the experience of God. Creation in whatever form. Creation of, the artistic way, but the artistic way of painting and drawing and all of that, music, all of that, but also creation and like, what do you want your life to be? What if your life is your masterpiece of creation? What are you doing there? So, your higher self is the connection to all creation. Here's the part. Here's the part. The ego self is not meant to create anything. The ego self is meant to just perceive. It's meant to just receive what's happening. Okay? Okay, you with me? Hello, everyone. The ego is not meant to say, okay, what do I have to do to make that happen? And I've got to do that. And da 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 da. And you know this feeling, right? Because it goes to overwhelm in less than 60 seconds where you're like, oh my God, what am I going to do? Because the ego's not made for that. It's like trying to give a baby 100-pound dumbbell and say, do it. Like, it doesn't have the capability. Your ego self, your conscious mind, the thinking brain is meant to receive what's happening. It's meant to receive ideas. So we don't try to operate from the ego and come up with what I need to do. And that's where a lot of us mess up. Amen. When you catch yourself going, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? I got to figure out what to do. I've got to make this happen. I've got to make this work. Oh my God, what am I going to do? You're an ego. Stop everything because it's not going to end well. You're not meant to come up with it. I'm going to give you a flip experience that I know you've had. Have you ever had a moment where all of a sudden you go, ding, and you get this brilliant idea? You're like, oh my God. Oh, I love that idea. Like, that's amazing. You know who came up with that idea? You know who sent it to the ego program? Your higher self. We're not meant to conceive as the ego. We're meant to perceive what's happening as the ego. The higher self part of you is the part of you that's conceiving. It's the part of you that is directing. It's the part of you that's giving those little intuitive nudges, saying, go this way, go that way. Oh, try this idea. Oh, do this thing. But you know what happens a lot of times? We get those intuitive nudges. We all get the intuitive nudges. By the way, no one on here is incapable of receiving the intuitive nudges. We get them. It is just how much do you pay attention to them? Because they're coming all the time. But if you're all bogged up with emotional blocks and you're all heady because you've been trying to do life yourself and you're in total overwhelm, you might not hear the intuitive nudges as clearly. And this happens a lot, right? This happens a lot in our world. We see it all the time. It is not impossible though. If this is where you have been, breathe. It's going to be okay. Your higher self, your intuitive self is the natural state of being for you. And so as soon as you start slowing down and you stop letting that ego, scarcity, fear-based mind lead you, you're going to start feeling and hearing things in a different way. So the intuitive part of you, the higher self part of you, is giving you guidance all the time. Here's what it feels like. When you think about doing something and you feel an energy close on your heart, you feel this like, I don't want to do that, right? But the mind comes in 1 second later and is like, but you really should do that. Because if you don't do that, then it's going to be this and that and da 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 da, and all that stuff, right? And so you force yourself to do something against your own will, against your own intuitive feelings. You force yourself to do it. Does it ever end well? Like, do we ever actually take the time to assess and be like, but did that work? But that's the thing about the ego program is it's tricky. It's tricky. It will be like, well, it didn't work because you didn't do it good enough. You just need to do it better and then more, right? Who am I calling out right now? All of us. Those of you on YouTube, I'm sorry, but the chat is not working for some reason. I don't know why. So our ego will come in and be like, do it again. Do it again. Okay, so here's what you got to do. You've got to learn to recognize the ego. The way that you can recognize the ego is if it feels like limitation, if it feels like fear, if it feels like scarcity, if it feels like you're going to die if you don't do it. It is a very distinct feeling. It's a very distinct feeling. And you've got to learn to start recognizing it because the ego's job, we're getting a little philosophical, but we're going to go there for a second. The ego's job is to be like the trainer, like the boxing trainer, the sparring partner for the higher self. Meaning it's going to come at you constantly with the exact opposite of the truth of who you are. So if you get this brilliant idea for creation from your higher self and you're like, oh my God, I could do this, I could do that, and da da da, da, and it's gonna be amazing. Oh my gosh, I love it. And then immediately, we all know we've all been there, immediately whoosh, ego comes in and he's like, you're not good enough for that. You don't have this, you don't have that, you don't have this, blah, 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 blah. And if we are not trained, which is we all come here with Marli in the morning to get trained. If we're not trained, we're going to believe it. And that's the problem because that immediately takes you out of receiving mode. You can't hear that guidance anymore. And then you go into scarcity hustle because the ego has said you're not enough, you can't do it, blah, 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 all this stuff. And then you try to effort your way there to try to make it happen while believing you're not enough. What we have to do is be able to recognize that feeling, laugh in its face. I am so not joking. Laugh in its face. Because the moment that you can recognize it's an ego program, it's not who you are, then you are no longer identifying with the ego program. You feel me on this? Because this is huge. If those of you who are on can get this, you're getting a lot right now. Click in the comments if you've got it. If you can reject that ego feeling as a non-truth, it says this somewhere in the Bible too. I don't know all of my biblical history, but it says it somewhere in the Bible. Like, first you have to rebuke. First you must rebuke, and then you can identify with the truth of who you are. So, polar universe, soul, ego, opposites. If you are identifying with the ego, you're not identifying with the higher self. You with me? So if I'm identifying with the ego, then I don't even have the capability to be in that connective, intuitive, receiving creation mode. You're in effort, you're in the program. It's just going to loop you over and over and over and over again until you go, I rebuke thee. I rebuke thee. I'm done. This is so stupid. I've done this a million times. I have followed this not enough voice 800 times. It gets me nowhere. There is no beating the ego through trying to fix it. You cannot fix that feeling of not enough. I don't know. I want to say it like so loudly. You cannot fix that feeling of not enough. You must just leave it. You have to just leave it. You got to get off of that side of the polarity. You've got to say, I hear you. And I know you feel it, right? We feel it. That's why it's so hard. You feel it, but you've got to be like, this is a non truth. It's an, even if it doesn't feel right to you in that moment, because maybe you've been identifying with the ego for decades, this is a non truth. This is a feeling that I've experienced more than a few times, and it has yet to go away and it has yet to do anything positive for me. Rebuke. It's a non truth. And the moment that you reject it entirely, it's a program. Again, I want to really, really emphasize this. It is not part of who you are. Okay. Because I know we also have, like, in our personal development world, we have a lot of the integration of like the inner child and all of these things. The not enough syndrome, the scarcity, the limitation is not a part of who you are. It's the program that's running that you chose. I know your soul chose to come and have this program run so that you could strengthen that higher self light part of you. It's the sparring partner of the soul. So think about it like this. If the soul came in and there was no blocks, no challenges, nothing to overcome, just does it strengthen in its light? Does it get stronger? No. We come, and this is, if you can write this down, write it down if you can receive it right now. We come to play the earth game, which is, can you remember who you are in the face of who you are not? Can you remember who you are in the face of who you are not? Can you remember that you are the higher self in the face of the ego? Because the ego's strong, it's a strong energy, but it's not strong on its own. It only has the strength you give it because you are the electricity. You're charging the program. So the moment that you reject it and pull your energy back, it doesn't have power over you anymore. It's just a program. So we have to rebuke non truth, see you bye. And then once we're rejecting the polarity of the ego, automatically you identify as the higher self. Because think about this, like, take a moment and just take a step back. If you're looking at the ego and you're seeing the program of the not enough, everybody can see it, right? There's a voice that runs. It's a program that's constantly saying, you need to be better. You're not this. You're not that, blah, 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 all that stuff, right? Who's looking at it? Who is the one observing the ego? That's you. That's the truth of who you are. And by the way, I have a free meditation for you guys. It's a free energetic shift meditation. If you want it, you can comment soul on Instagram, YouTube. I'm going to put it in the notes for you below, but comment the word soul and I will send you, my little Marley bot will send you a link to the free energetic shifting meditation to shift you out of the ego and into the higher self state of being. This is something you can do literally every day. In fact, I highly recommend doing it literally every day. It's like 5 minutes and it shifts your perspective to identify with the higher self part of you and not this ego part of you. So, are we getting it here? Okay. So, when you're in ego, you can't receive. And I'm not meaning like you can't, people can't hand you something. I'm meaning you can't receive that intuitive guidance that's guiding you on the easiest path of your life. The easiest path of like your higher self has a bird's eye view of everything that you want and exactly how to get there. Like if you could imagine that your life trajectory is like a GPS. Your higher self is the one looking at the whole thing and it's going, oh, there's traffic over there. Okay, let's have her turn left so that she can avoid that traffic. Oh, there's a beautiful route. Oh my gosh, she's going to have a great view. Go left. Higher self, go left. Ego, no, the way is right. I know the way is right because it's the interstate. That's the fastest way. You guys get it? When we're operating out of the ego, we're rejecting the higher self. And you can't receive. You can't receive the guidance. You can't receive the next move. You're just in that like hustle, scarcity, like, but I have to go, like, I have to do this, I have to do that. You don't have the availability to receive what it is that you need to do next, to receive the beautiful ideas that are going to accelerate your life beyond anything that you could ever imagine. You don't have the capability to receive the direction. You're so in your head running the program that is only going to lead you in a big scarcity loop. No, thank you. No, thank you. No, ma'am. Amen. Chris said my ego was freaking out as I got on, and this has helped so much this morning. I love that. It makes me so happy that the morning show is so helpful for you guys. Like, yes, we're winning here. Okay, so do we get it? I know easier said than done, but we got to start with saying it and then we follow up with doing it, right? And it's a daily practice. Now, here's what's cool: the more you do it, the stronger the muscle gets. So imagine it like this: every time that you don't follow that scarcity constriction, like ugh, awful feeling that believes that you're limited, that believes that you don't have access to everything in the world, a better way to say that, but you see what I'm saying. Every time that you reject or rebuke that program that the ego runs, your higher self strengthens. Think about it like the muscle gets stronger. Every single time that you identify more with the truth of who you are and not the program of the ego that's running scarcity, that's running limitation, you strengthen that muscle of identity with the higher self, with the truth of who you are. Now, this is something that has to be consistent, and it'll get easier and easier and easier to where you won't have to think about it as much. Like you won't have to, it'll be automatic. Like, so right away, if you've been trained to identify with the ego, it's probably going to require some effort, right? Because we're breaking a habit basically. But once you break that habit and you naturally start aligning with that higher part of you, with the truth of who you are, it's going to get easier and easier and easier to live here. And as you do, you're going to start to operate in an entirely different way because it's not going to have should and overthinking and trying to figure things out and feeling like you have to fix stuff. It's not going to have that. It's just going to have a feeling that's like, it feels like creation. It feels like love. It feels like that golden frequency energy. Do you know what I mean? Like that vibration. And it's going to start setting you up for the most incredible synchronicities. Like things are going to happen and you're going to be like, what? Like, what? Okay, silly example, but you're going to love it. In 2020, Robert bought a camper van and we ended up going, it started at the end of 2019. No, 2020. Wait, 2020. We ended up taking a cross country camper van trip dur- during the pandemic. Yes. But it was just me and him in a van. It was fine. So it started though, our first kind of test run. We went to the coast here in North Carolina, and there was a ferry that we were meant to catch. Okay. If Robert is on, he's going to love this story. He loves this story. Okay, so there was a ferry that we needed to catch to cross the channel to go to the campsite or wherever that we were staying at. So, right before we had started on this trip, there had been like a hurricane or something. We always seem to travel on the tail end of a hurricane. There was a hurricane or something like that. We were trying to hurry up and get to the ferry, and then the last ferry ride of the night's canceled, right? We're like, ah. Now, I'll say this. When I travel, I am so good at surrender mode. Surrender mode, receiving mode, same thing. Same thing. I'm so good at it because, like, travel is just my element. Like, I am not an anxious traveler. I'm like, "We missed the plane, whatever, we'll figure it out. We'll get on another plane. Maybe we'll go to a different city." Like, I am so good. It is my element. So when this happened, I was like, "Well, that happened for a reason. Has to be, right?" And it's a ferry. We'll get it the next morning. Like, we literally are driving our bed. Like, we can sleep anywhere. It's no big deal, right? Robert's a little more anxious about traveling, and he was a little upset about it. And it's no big deal. It's fine. Get this. The place that's on this side of the ferry, like where we would wake up the next morning and just get on the ferry and go, the place that was this side of it was a campsite on this gorgeous, like, farm-like land on the water, and they did sunset horseback riding on the beach. What? Okay, okay. You guys with me? In just relaxing into receiving mode, instead of being like, "Oh, the ferry's not running. Let's see if we can find a different way. Let's find a different route, blah, 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 blah." Instead of letting the mind overthink, we just went with what was happening. It's like, "Okay, well, we'll take the ferry in the morning, no big deal." And in allowing that to just happen, what was lined up was like a bucket list experience. It's so gorgeous. You know what I'll do? I'm committing here. I will post the pictures for you guys on my Instagram so that you can see how gorgeous this experience was. My point is, our higher self is always guiding and rearranging for us to have the absolute best experience. We're not meant to suffer. We're not meant to struggle. We're not meant to go through life feeling like we have to figure it out all on our own. We can just surrender to what is. And when you stop identifying with that part of you that feels like you're constantly in scarcity, constantly in fear, and you start identifying more with this higher self, flow, truth, beautiful energy, it ends up lining you up with the most incredible experiences that you didn't even know were possible. And that's the thing about our mind and the ego, it thinks it knows, right? How many, it's all right. We can all say it. How many of you feel like you already know what's going to happen today and tomorrow? You already have this idea of like what's going to you're planning your future, and what are you planning it on? Based on the past. Now isn't that just a nice little way to create a loop of reality? Planning the future based on the past. Planning the future based on the past. We're creating our own looping experience without even being conscious of it. And I'm trying to get everybody here conscious of it. You got to get conscious of it because you're the one doing it, but it feels like it's happening to you because you're on the side of identification with the ego that believes in fear and scarcity and has that victim mentality. It's not the truth. Reject it. Be open to the new levels that want to come in. Be open to the intuitive guidance that is guiding you all the time. So we talked about having closed energy heart. When you have closed energy heart, that is a signal from your higher self, from your intuitive guidance. That's not the way. Don't do that. Don't do that. When you feel the fear, when you feel the anxiety, when you feel the like, ugh, you feel like you're going to die if you don't figure it out, not the way. Stop, stop, stop. Like I'm talking to, like, when your kids are doing something and they have momentum and you're like, stop, stop, stop. You got to like yell at the ego, stop, I'm done. I'm not doing it anymore. Now, the opposite, and how to know what your higher self guidance is versus the logical mind. The opposite is it's going to feel like elation. It's going to feel good. It's going to feel either neutral, like you don't really feel up or down, just like, yeah, whatever, I could do that. Or it's going to feel like, open expansion energy. We are literally built in with a GPS mechanism, and it's open as yes, closed as no. Truly. But you have to start tuning in to be able to hear it and feel it. You all have the capability. Every single human has the capability. We're built with this. But you got to start tuning in. You got to reject and tune out the fear mind, because that's that can be really really loud, right? You all know this feeling when fear takes over, and it's like nothing has logic to it in that moment. This is something to really know. Never, ever, 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 ever underline it, underscore it, big bold letters it. Never take action out of fear. I know we've done it a million times. Stop immediately. Because when you take action out of fear, you are manifesting the energy you're in. Never take action out of fear. If you're in fear, you got to calm down first. Okay? You got to get yourself out of that state first. And then you tune into the higher way, then you take action, because you don't want to manifest fear energy. It's not going to create the result you want. This has happened so many times. Like, it's just part of being human. You know what I mean? We're learning this. We should be taught this in school. We're not taught this in school. We have to learn this on our own. Anytime that you take action out of fear, here's what happens. It is like throwing a problem on your future timeline. And you're going to have to face that problem at some point. Anytime you take action out of fear, throwing a problem that you're going to have to face in your future timeline. It might not be immediately. So, in example, when you take action out of fear, you might get an immediate result. You know what I mean? Because that's what our ego does. Our ego is like, well, do this and you can get that result really quickly. But then it ends up setting you up for some bigger problem that you're going to have to deal with later. So we never want to take action when we're in fear, because it's only going to manifest a problem for later. You got to get yourself back to that neutral state and then tune in to that higher self part of you, receive from there, and then take your action from there, so that you create the result that you actually want to experience, and not one that's going to set you up for some clunky problem that you're going to have to deal with later. Amen and the hallelujahs. Okay, those of you who are just jumping on, comment the word soul, and I'm going to send you immediately a meditation. That's an energy shifting meditation to shift you into your higher state part of you, and out of the ego, out of the not enough. Okay, it's entirely free. You'll get it right to your email. Those of you who have never done my meditations before, this is a like little mild tidbit taste of it. There's no music or anything like that. It's just to tap you in, and you can do it every day. I highly recommend doing it every day, because it's going to remind you constantly who you are. And the more that you do it, the more that muscle is going to get built. And then you won't have to fight the ego as much. You know what I mean? You'll just be like, oh, you're a puny little thing. Unconcerned, not worried about it. What else did I want to say before we go? This, everything that we talk about here and everything that I teach is about reminding you of the truth and the power of who you actually are. And this is our journey. This is why we're here. We're here to have a good time. Like, we're here to create purposefully. Like, think about it like you're writing your own play. You're writing your own movie. Like, our souls chose this experience, and it chose a challenge. And so you're facing that challenge on a daily basis. But your soul, the higher self, the truth of who you are, chose it. And when you start operating from that point of view, I chose this. Okay, let me figure that out then. Like, let me operate from I chose this challenge. If I chose the challenge, it means that I also have the capability to overcome the challenge. Amen. So whatever is happening in your life, because we all have our flavors of struggle and problem, right? That consistent looping pattern that we're dealing with. That is your specific flavor that you chose to overcome. You are meant to overcome it. You are meant to thrive in that area of life, whatever is challenging you at the moment. You are meant to. You have the capability to. You have all of the strength and power to do it, but you can't do it if you're identifying with it. You got to pop out of that and start identifying with the higher self part of you, with the soul part of you. Amen. This is the foundation of the Soulpreneur Coding Program. That's the program that I have open right now. It's 60% off. If you want to come into that program, I highly recommend doing it now. It will never be this low of a price again. So right now you're getting like $600 off or something. It's like crazy. Soulpreneur Coding teaches you how to fully identify with the higher self version of you. It's going to take you out of that ego scarcity mind. I love this program. I've been re-listening to it as I've been promoting it and putting it out into the world. And I'm just like, oh, I wish the whole world could be in this. It's so profound. It will transcend you out of that fear mind. It will take you out of scarcity. You'll be listening to it and you'll go, oh my God. It's incredible. All of the information for Soulpreneur Coding and the code to get 60% off is in the link in my bio on Instagram, YouTube. I'll put it in the show notes below. Check it out. Read through the page. I made a beautiful sales page. I overdid it, but it has a lot on there so that you can feel into it. You can see if this is right for you. It's right for you. If you are a seeker and you feel called to a bigger vision and you've been experiencing blocks with not enough, with scarcity, with fear, this is the program that's going to transcend you out of that. It's so beautiful. Go check it out. There's also a payment plan if you need a payment plan. There's also a VIP option if you would like to upgrade and have a couple of private coaching calls with me. Okay. I love you guys so much. Thank you for being here live. We will be back here on Wednesday for another episode of The Morning Show. And as always, if you have a question that you want to submit into The Morning Show, you can submit your question at marliansel.com/The Morning Show. And we will read your questions on air and answer them live. They are completely anonymous, whether you leave your name on the sheet or not. And share the show. If this resonated with you today, please share the show. It helps us to grow our impact and get this message out to more people. I love you guys so much. Thank you for being here. Mwah, mwah, mwah. Have a beautiful rest of your day. Goodbye, my loves. Goodbye.